What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to or watching, as the case may be, Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me. My countenance changed in me. But I kept the matter in my heart." And we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about honoring father and mother. Exactly what does that mean? As I said in the show description, I was in an exchange with an individual over on Substack, and I don't know what the deal was. He took exception to something I wrote, and quite frankly, what I wrote was pretty innocuous as far as as far as my articles go. It's just companion and Christian relationships. I'll read you the first paragraph, the introduction. In the quest for meaningful relationships, Christians often seek partners who not only share their faith, but also engage their minds. The richness of a relationship can significantly increase when both partners actively contribute their thoughts and opinions, effectively doubling their problem-solving capacity. This dynamic interaction not only leads to innovative solutions to life's challenges, but also deepens the relational connection through a lively exchange of ideas. Scripture offers insights into the value of such partnerships, emphasizing companionship, mutual respect, and unity as a foundational element for success. For a successful Christian relationship. Sorry, I messed up the reading of that. But anyway, it blows my mind how anybody could look at that article and find anything in the world wrong with it. But they did, and they do. It's always going to be somebody. And I'm not sure exactly his issue with it, quite frankly. But such is life, I suppose. Sorry, I'm trying to, right here. I was trying to find the way to copy the link to get it into the comment section. There it is. Good morning, Diana Harden, John Exum. Good to see you. How y'all doing? Hope you're doing well. So anyway, after an exchange, the fella, oh, hello, Holly H. Good morning to you, and good morning, everyone. So after an exchange a little bit, the fella, he cited a deeper meaning of family and familial relationships, and he cited honor thy father and mother. But he did that in rebuttal to this to this comment. I'm going to tell you what it is. Whenever a man and woman get married, that is not two families coming together. That is one family being created that is an entirely separate family than the two families of origin. For instance, my wife is my wife. That relationship and title and designation trumps all others. It takes priority over every other label and designation that she can wear. Same for me. I am her husband. I am no longer my mother's son. I'm no longer my sister's brother. I am my wife's husband. That is first. My family, the Brewer family, did not gain a daughter. I married a wife. They lost a son. My wife's family did not gain a son. They lost a daughter. Very early in our relationship, whenever my wife was pregnant with Anthony, we kind of had this situation arise in which my father-in-law wanted to superimpose their family's will over our own and wanted LaBeth to travel when she was like 8 4/5 pregnant, 8 and 4/5 of a month pregnant. And she didn't want to. And they were making her feel pretty bad over it. So I got involved. And then her daddy got involved. And he tried to educate me and say, you got to understand that's my daughter. And I said, no, sir, you are wrong. That is my wife. She will forever be my wife, and she will never more be your daughter. And we had a pretty good understanding from then on out. Folks, we have to conceptualize marriage in this way. So this person said, well, you've got a problem with what Scripture teaches about family. And what he did is he took my words and applied them farther out than they were intended to go. Obviously, my wife still has a relationship with her family. Obviously, I still have a relationship with my family. Obviously, the two could come together and create friendship bonds based on the commonality of me and her. It's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying in all situations, all relationships, to speak the language of my people, all relationships play second fiddle to the relationship of wife and husband. Period. Good morning, Jason. Jason. You said good morning and everything. I was going back and listening to some of my stuff yesterday. I do not intend ever to ignore comments. If I Jason, this is not just to you because I ignored your comment yesterday, accidentally, I might add. But anybody, if you put a comment, sometimes the chat aggregate that I have, it jumps, and you may think, well, Tony, you see my comment, I can see it on the screen. I get it. I just sometimes I overlook it. So if you ever comment, then and I don't acknowledge it, or like for instance, Ted just made a comment, and it's a good comment. But even like, let's say that Aaron and I are having a discussion, we're really flowing, and I don't want to interrupt Aaron, or I don't want to interrupt myself. I might just click and highlight the comment and not say anything. That's my way of being like, hey, thank you for your comment. I acknowledge that it's a good comment. I just can't get to it now. Anyway, sorry about that, and hopefully that housekeeping didn't take us out of the mood too much. Hide and watch. Good morning to you. And again, so Jason Goldtrap from yesterday, hello and good morning. And please give our brother a like and share. And of course, Ted Hook Knight, absolutely. It is there's no better thing in the world than when a young man and a young woman wed or bond with in holy matrimony, and their families share similar values and interests, and their families can get along. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's really nothing better. It's a very good existence, but it's not required. And I think we've got to be careful, because if we enmesh and we insert ourselves, like for instance, my children are of a marrying, that's not right. A marrying age. Of marriageable, they don't sound right either. Anyway, my children are of an age both to be married. And we talk about it, sometimes to their chagrin, often, because it needs to be a conversation. And we talk about values. And I will tell you this. Thank you, John Exum. Marriageable. My children are of a marriageable age. So at least if I'm wrong in saying marriageable, then take it up with John Exum, because I got it from him. If we insert ourselves, like for instance, me and my wife, we have to respect the leave and cleave order. All right? We have to. We have to respect the leave and cleave order. And if we don't, then what we are going to be doing is we are going to be mucking about in another man or another woman's marriage. And we don't need to do that. And in fact, that does not fall under the scope of honor thy father and mother. Really and truly, the reason I'm talking about this, I'm having such a long introduction to lay the foundation here, is because I can define honor thy father and mother, and I can show you the biblical definition of it in about 2 minutes. It's pretty easy. In fact, it's kind of a cuss word here lately, but you have to necessarily infer the meaning or the method to honor thy father and mother. And I know that this necessarily inferring thing is it's fallen out of fashion in certain circles, but not this circle. So let's talk about this quick. All right, a marriage, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh contract. Do we understand? It's hard to understand in modernity exactly the utility of marriage. I want you to go back. Just go turn in your history books back to 1825. Even in 1825, you needed a man and a woman. You needed a woman at home producing babies, taking care of the home, and you needed a man that was able to work and provide for her and protect her. Because the world, even in Western culture, in the United States of America, in 1825, the world was exceptionally rough and difficult. You didn't have women going out and building skyscrapers, working in the oil rigs, working these difficult jobs that made the infrastructure of what we call Western civilization. Now, how could, and it's because women, quite frankly, they don't excel at those jobs. You may find some exceptions, but those are not the rules. You cannot build a skyscraper with 100% female labor because you cannot find enough females that are able to do it, that are willing to do it, that will do it. It's just not going to happen. If it would happen, if it could happen, it would have happened. And I understand people can go back. Well, what about in World War II? Whenever, I can't remember the slogan in World War II. There was a mascot, a woman mascot, but they had to hype women up, and it was a big deal for them to go into the factories, and they could not be as productive as the men. But the men were all fighting the wars. You see, we have nerfed the world so much. Dangerous men have tamed this earth so much that we forget how difficult it is to survive. And that's a blessing. I'm glad it happened. My dad and I were talking about that a few days ago. We need to go back to that as much as we can. Mom needs to raise their own children and stop letting the government do it. Yep, I said that. Absolutely. Rosie the Riveter, thank you so much. Hey, Alabama. I couldn't think of that for $100 bill. I remembered what she looked like in my head. I remember the posters. I wasn't there. I saw posters in history class. But anyway, the point of the matter is, even though that was a stopgap measure, that was never intended to be the norm. And in fact, no matter how much spunk and go get 'em attitude Rosie the Riveter had, she was no match for Randy on his worst day. Randy the Riveter. So where do we get these gender roles? Well, I tell you, it goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3. So you know what happened? The fall of man happened, and then, verse 17, and to Adam he said of Genesis 3, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground. What? Cursed is the ground? Yeah, for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat of the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread till thou return to the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. Well, what about the woman? Here you go. Chiefs kicker Harrison Butler is caught flack for addressing as we may talk about that tomorrow. But yeah, they're saying he said Jesus killed the Jews. I mean, Jews killed Jesus, so he's anti-Semitic, and they're doing exactly what we all knew was going to happen. All right, verse 16. Here's what he said unto the woman. So the man would have to earn his living by the sweat of his brow and the strength of his back. in hard labor would the earth yield forth her fruits. Folks, he's going to have to work, and he's built for the work. He's got bone. He's got more dense bone. He is built in such a way that he can run long distances. You know, there are still tribes on the continent of Africa that hunt game on the wide open plains, and they hunt the game by just running the game down. Could you imagine on foot in the hills of Tennessee running a deer down to the point where the deer just collapses because it can't run anymore, and you still have the endurance to run up and relieve that deer of its life so you can eat it? That's amazing to me. And men are built. Women cannot do that. Women are not built to run that way because they're built to bear children. So under the man, he says you're going to have to earn your living by the sweat of your brow and the strength of your back, but you're built for it. Muscle density, bone density, muscle mass, testosterone. I mean, you got a super drug coursing through your system. Men are made to be protectors and fighters and pack horses. All just they're made to do that. They're made to do the hard and heavy lifting. You got that right. Boys have been emasculated in the school system for the last 2 or 3 decades, and now we wonder why we have so much trouble with young men. You got that right. Because they're raised by single mothers. And God have mercy on you if you were a single mother through no fault of your own. It does happen. You're not what we're talking about. There have always been the tragic case of boys being reared without fathers since time immemorial. But only lately has it become the norm. Anyway, so to the woman, this is the curse of the woman, and we don't talk about this a lot, but here's where God lays down the gender roles, folks. The masculine gender, you're a pack horse, you're a protector, a fighter. You have to till the land, you have to clear the land, chop the trees, drag the trees, build the house, clear the land, plow, plant, harvest, run the bear and the wolf and the cougar off, run the evil people off. And you have to all do all this providing for your wife and and subsequent generations to come through your children. You have to protect your wife and children. Now, what about the woman? Well, verse 16, we're reading backwards through the text. Unto the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Folks, that's another way of saying you're going to have a desire for your man, your husband. He is going to rule over thee. That is a copulative relationship. That's sex. The gender roles, and here's what happens. Women rather, are the gatekeepers. This is in modern time, but it goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3. In modern time, women are the gatekeepers of sex. Do you want men to stop being promiscuous? And I'm speaking to women as a whole, obviously not the individual women here. But so the world at large, if you want men to stop being promiscuous, women stop rewarding them with sex whenever they are promiscuous. And you might think, well, Tony, that's crazy. No, the statistics are out, and there's been studies done of this over the last decade or more, that we've almost reverted back because of social media and dating websites to a kind of medieval hypergamy where a very, very few men at the very top of the competency / dominance hierarchy has access to the majority of women. So about, if I remember correctly from the studies that I read on this, about 15 to 20% of men are sexually active with about 80% of the women that are sexually active. Like, you understand, there are no more virgins. And when I say that, I'm well aware that in a technical sense there are. But for a young man, the chance that he actually finds a 20-year-old virgin with no debt, in other words, she has no baggage, that's almost like finding a unicorn. Yeah, there are too many girly men in this world, and some who cannot even define what a woman is, let alone be a responsible father. True. Yeah, the Boy Scouts have really gone off the rails. And I've noticed that single moms who can't help being single usually find men to help teach their boys. They put them in Boy Scouts and sports with good male coaches, things like that. Yeah. Yeah, usually a woman who is a single mother through no fault of her own, she's really good about finding some male influence for that boy. Yeah, yep. So here's the marriage contract. The man protects and provides for the woman, and she makes a home and bears his children. She has a copulative relationship. So if we want to lower the promiscuity of quote unquote men, which men by and large are not promiscuous nowadays because they simply don't have the opportunity, because most of the women are sexually active with a minimal amount of men. That's it. Marry young. That's another problem, because we have nerfed society so much. We have also masculinized women and feminized men, that we have thrown this marriage contract and gender roles out the window. Because now we have taught about 2 or maybe 3 generations of women that it is empowering to be promiscuous the way certain base men are promiscuous. So we have feminized men to emulate the worst qualities of feminism, and we have masculinized women to emulate the worst qualities of masculinity. Think about that. And the gender roles have been thrown out the window. And now we've gone to where men and women are interchangeable. There's no difference between a man and a woman, which that's led to this gender confusion, and you can chop off perfectly good body parts. So we haven't even got to honor thy father and mother. Why do we need to honor thy father and mother? What in the world does that mean? Well, first off, we lay this foundation that this is a marriage, that a woman is to be a keeper at home, to bear children, be feminine. The man should provide and protect. And that's the trade-off. Okay? And it sounds icky to talk about it like that. Well, Tony, where's love? Listen, you can have a very successful marriage without what the world defines as love. Okay? That's not a popular line of thought. You know, you got Taylor Swift out there writing anthems about, but daddy, I love him, and disrespecting her father who knows best and thinking everything's going to turn out all right. I'm telling you, don't be like Taylor Swift. She is an absolute failure of a woman. The home is not seen as important in our country for the most part. You got that right. So, let me land this plane here before we run too far afoul or run too far aground. The reason this is set up from the foundation of the world is because that's the way it had to be. That's the way, like, It was just it was utility. It was purely utilitarian. Because think about, like, go back 1,000 years. You couldn't. A woman wasn't powerful enough. A woman wasn't strong enough. A woman couldn't wield a sword. Forget what you see in Hollywood movies where a woman can fight a 220-pound man with a sword and think that she can do anything. That's a fantasy. Rita Keeling, that is part of it, but that is actually not what that entails. That's not that. It is good if you want to honor your father and mother, live a life that doesn't bring reproach. But there's a very specific definition of honoring your father and mother in the context of the scriptures, and we will look at that before we close out the podcast. I will land this plane. So I just want to talk. I wanted to talk briefly about that marriage contract. Women have a role, men have a role, and it don't work unless we fulfill our role. And the world has gotten too easy. Remember, feminism does not exist in a third world country. Feminism did not exist whenever Russia invaded Ukraine. Feminism does not exist in the face of trials and tribulations. In fact, the funny thing about it, in 2020, whenever COVID hit and everybody was locked down and this, that, and the other, a whole lot of dyed-in-the-wool feminists went trad wife real quick because they saw, ooh, I need me a man to take care of me. I'm not going to go to Walmart and fight and fist fight and wrestle for toilet paper. I'll keep a home. I will keep a man sexually satisfied, and he will keep coming back. And like, he'll go out and he'll come back and he'll bring me things that I need, and I will keep him sexually satisfied. That's the marriage contract. Now, it's much deeper than that. There's not just a physical level to marriage, there's a spiritual level. You love this woman, and this woman loves you, and the companionship and all that, but it begins here. You break it down, the nuts and bolts. Like I said, just think about 1,000 years ago. A man went out, fought the wolves, killed the bear, plowed the field, planted, harvested, built the house, and the woman made him comfortable at night. That's the marriage contract. All right? And it had to be that way because that's the way the world was. Now, let's go back to Genesis. I believe it's in chapter 2 towards the end. Where is it at? Right here. So further in this conversation, I actually stated that I don't believe you know exactly. I said, I believe the fella that you're talking about has a misunderstanding of what marriage is. And he says, well, what is marriage? Well, it's real easy. This is marriage. And I read it. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she is taken out of man. Therefore, shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So, therefore, shall a man, folks, I don't know, the word here is husband. It's ish, and it's looks like it has to do with male and not mankind. So a male in contrast to a woman, a husband or human being, a person in contrast to God. So right here, that's the thing. It can also be used as mankind, and it can also be translated as whosoever. So I'm not so sure that when the word man is used, that it's talking about man as in a human male. I think verse 24 can be read thusly. Therefore, shall a human leave their father and mother, and shall cleave unto their, well, the word wife here, No, see well, see, that's another thing. Even this, the word wife, I don't know. I'm not a Hebrew scholar. We're going to read it thusly, and we're going to read it just like it's, and we're going to say man means male as opposed to female, and wife means wife, as in woman belonging to the man, as opposed to a man or a woman that doesn't belong to the man. So, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Now, this fellow that I was talking to told me that that was descriptive, that that wasn't prescriptive. And I didn't even deal with that because I was like, well, you've got a problem because Jesus makes it prescriptive in Matthew chapter 19. I've got that open right here. Listen, I'm going to start reading in verse 1. And once I make this point, we're going to swiftly move into the next segment. And it came to pass that when Jesus had finished this sayings, he departed from Galilee and came into the coast of Judea beyond Jordan, and a great multitude followed him, and he healed them. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered and said, Have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. So Jesus made it prescriptive, even if it wasn't intended to be prescriptive in Genesis 2. Yeah, well, so that, yeah, woman opposite of man, but there's a lot of other, the word is more nuanced than that, John, but we're going to use that usage of the term for the context. Because quite frankly, it doesn't matter, because this fella made the case that only the man was to leave and cleave, that the woman was not to leave and cleave. And like, he never did answer me. Like, you mean you think the woman is not to leave her family of origin? Why? I mean, that's not the way marriage has been understood for all the millennia that it's been active on the earth. I mean, wedding ceremonies of the father of the bride giving her away has been around since time immemorial. Again, I go back to my original. These are not two families coming together. This is one complete family unit separate and apart from the two family units of origin. Now, despite my looking this up on the air, I think it's the height of foolishness to say that the man is to leave his father and mother, but the woman is not. I believe, and again, I've said this earlier, it's a little bit of a cuss word now, but I believe we must necessarily infer what's good for the goose is good for the gander. What the man must do, the woman must do as well, because they shall be one flesh. The man and the woman cannot be one flesh if multiple fleshes are coming into that union. You got me? I think it's looking too deep into it, John. No, in Genesis 2, like, you could actually read, there would be a way to read it. Therefore shall a man leave his father. Well, the problem is his father. So the word azab is to leave, to lose, forsake. But then you've got this parenthetical, which is, okay, that's ETH. It's a sign of a definite direct object, but it's not translated in English. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and even the word his mother here, it's E-M, M, or a mother of humans, Deborah's relationship to people, figuratively, of animals, a point of departure, division. Like, the Hebrew language is just not very precise. So there very well could be room. But again, with this word woman, though, well, she shall be called woman, and it's two different words that could be presented here, but it's each and every. So, in other words, this word can also be used as a pronoun, I guess. But anyway, I don't think it's that big a deal. I just think it's just straightforward. The context dictates that this is a man and a woman, and I don't think it has to be dug any deeper than that. But I think also the context dictates that because they're one flesh, this is not two families coming together. This is a woman leaving her father and mother, and a man leaving his father and mother, and clinging one to another. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I guess if the word for woman just also included a usage for both genders or sexes, it still wouldn't, I think, open up the door for same-sex marriage because, well, maybe that verse could be twisted. But the more I look at this in my e-sword, the more I talk through this with y'all, there is no way that this word woman in the context can be translated anything other than an English word that means a gender female. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. That's what I meant. The context. Cool beans. All right. Now, where do I need to go next with this? Oh yeah. I was making the point that this fella was saying that this only applied to the man. I'm like, you can't believe that. Again, my wife cleaves to me. I cleave to my wife. We have an entirely separate family. Nobody else. It's me, her, and God. That's the triangle. It can't be a square or is there a five-sided, a pentagon? It can't be a square or a pentagon. The five sides would be her family of origin, my family of origin, God, her, and me. It's not that. All right. Now, I made this point, and he rebutted with this whole idea about, well, we're supposed to take care of our old people. We're supposed to honor our father and mother. Honoring the father and mother would disagree with what you have to say. No, honoring father and mother does not disagree with anything that I have to say. We're going to define honoring father and mother now. And I want to build off of what we talked about with the curse of the woman, that her desire would be to her husband and he shall rule over her. The reason is for utility's sake, because the woman was the weaker vessel as far as physically, and she can't get out there in the world and provide for herself when she's got to fight off the bears and the wolves and the evil in the world. That's men's job. She's not built to do that. She's built to make a home and to produce babies. All right. Now let's go to, let's go to Matthew 15. Yeah. Some men aren't cut out to be husbands and should not marry. They tend to make their family miserable. If those men would do what is normally called manning up, they'd make good husbands. That's it. Don't marry to make your friends and family happy. You got that right. All right. Where do I want to go now? Oh, I do want to go to Matthew 19. John, I want to look at that. I'm curious. And I think it's good to work through stuff on the podcast. All right. Have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? That's easy. And said, for this cause shall a man, the word is anthropos in Greek. Now, Greek is a more specific language. I knew what you meant. Matthew 19. Matthew 19, the word for this cause shall a man, that's anthropos. The word anthropos is used whenever the gender or the sex is not of import. Leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife. Now, the word wife is gune, and it's a woman of any age, whether a virgin or married or a widow, a wife, a betrothed woman. So here's the thing. Contextually, anthropos here, it means mankind, but the idea is that the man would leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. But I think that now keep in mind, these are human beings talking. And we use the masculine pronoun when the gender, or it used to be the rule that you use the masculine pronoun whenever gender was unknown or not an issue. So when I'm looking at this and I'm reading the words of Jesus, for this cause shall a human being, and that's fine, but now it's leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife. That phrase, cleave to his wife or his wife, helps you interpret that backwards as that would be a man, because a woman cannot cleave to his wife. It would have to be her wife for one, and scripturally there wouldn't be a wife for a woman. I'm thinking that probably the reason the Holy Spirit chose to use the word anthropos is probably to show that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I never earned enough to make a secure living environment for my wife to bear children or adopt. Men must be men, or the family will fall apart. True that. True that, Jason. And I'm sorry you're bearing the burdens of that. I hope all is well. I saw a comment from you earlier that I forgot. Yeah, marry young and have at least 3 children. A eunuch for the kingdom, Jason. Just do what you can for the kingdom, and there's a reward in that. All right. So I've figured out what I wanted to know from Matthew chapter 19. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15, and let's check this out. All right. Oh, no, we're at Matthew 15. Matthew 15. Right here. All right. Then came to Jesus scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, why did thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. Now, the tradition of the elders was this set of traditions that the rabbis taught that had supposedly been passed down from God to Moses on Mount Sinai orally. And Moses passed them down to the people, and the people passed them down through the generations, mouth to ear. And then, of course, they were codified some 40 years before the destruction of Jerusalem. If you're wondering what prompted them to be codified, it's probably the advent of Jesus on the earth. That's right, John. They were unfair. Okay. So here's what Jesus answered. The disciples came and said, how come you boys don't wash their hands? It violates the traditions of the elders. Verse 3, Jesus answered and said, why do you also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? For God commanded, saying, honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father and mother, let him die the death. But I say unto you, whosoever shall say unto his father and his mother, it is a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, and honor not his father and or his mother, he shall be free. Thus ye have made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. Ye hypocrites, Well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draw nigh to me with their mouth, and they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, but in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Now, Tony, how in the world can you define what it means to honor thy father and mother? Well, I tell you, it's easy. Honoring your father and mother in the very specific definition that Jesus was using is you take care of them when they're old. When they can't take care of themselves, you take care of them. Why? Because the world is a harsh place. And just like 1,000 years ago, in order for a woman to be able to survive in such a harsh environment, she married a man, and her desire was to her man, and he ruled over her. That's a sexual relationship. And the man would then go out and earn the living by the sweat of his brow and the strength of his back because he was better able to do it. Whenever your parents get old, you take care of them because it's such a harsh world that people who are of old age, who do not have the ability to go out and earn a living by the sweat of their brow and the strength of their back, they need some help. And you need to honor them because you owe it to them. Even if you've got an absolute terrible parent that did you wrong. Now, I'm not talking about any major abuse. If you've got a parent that abused you physically, sexually, whatever, I do think there's a case to be made that you just leave them to I don't know. I'd have to talk about that in a one-on-one situation. If I had, and I know people who have parents and one or both of the parents sexually abused and physically abused, and it was terrible. So you're to honor your father and mother. Well, if they get old and they say, hey, I'm going to be old and I'm going to be out in the street if I can't come live with you, I don't know. I'd have to talk about that, man. That's a be a case by case basis. But all things being equal, even if you've got a set of parents that are not absolutely stellar, you at least owe them because without them you would not exist. Take care of them when they need it. Now you might be thinking, well, Tony, how do you know that from the context? Well, I tell you, I'm glad you asked. Oh, hello, Connie Barden. Good to see you. She says she's been in town. As a fella country folk, I know exactly what that means. She had to get up and go run errands and had to get up and get ready. Going into town's a big deal for country folk. Anyhow, sorry, I chased a squirrel. I hate to see elderly people going into the nursing homes. I have 5 children. Someone is getting custody of me. Well, that's why the Jews understood children to be a blessing, and a child is an arrow in a quiver, and blessed is a man whose quiver is full. 100 years ago, a bunch of children were your retirement package. You didn't have 401k. You had little Johnny, Sally's, Bob, Edna, and George, All right, let's go. Now you and I are Gentiles. Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew was written to Jews. Let's go to a gospel that was written more with the Gentile in mind. Now, let's read this. In fact, let me get this off here where I can actually read it. All right. Then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain of the scribes which came from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashed hands, they found fault. Well, they're Pharisees. That's what they do. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands oft, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders. And when they come from the market, except they wash, they eat not. And many other things there be, which they have received to hold, as the washing of cups and pots, brazen vessels, and of tables. So here we're getting more of an explanation. Why? because we're Gentiles. We don't know the oral traditions. My mother needed care I couldn't give, and she went into a nursing home, a nice one, and I was glad it was her decision. Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with helping your parents in a care facility because, quite frankly, um I mean, my mother back home, I'm glad that my sister and brother-in-law are people of means, because we've lived a life of relative poverty. I mean, we could move her in the house. She would hate it. But quite frankly, when the time comes and it's looking like it's encroaching, that it would probably be better for her to live in an assisted living facility. And quite frankly, those things are expensive. But that's a better that her living in an assisted living facility. And obviously, we don't just stick her there and forget her. We go visit, stuff like that. But they give care that you at home can't give. If, let's say, there's complications and stuff like that. Anyway, so verse 5, then the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, why walk not thy disciples according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashen hands? Now, here's the account that's written in a way that Gentile readers can get the fullness of it. And incidentally, we're going to see something called Corban. And if we understand Corban, then we understand what it means to honor father and mother the way Jesus is talking about here. Well hath Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandment of men. For, laying aside the commandment of God, ye hold the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups and many other such like things you do. Full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition. For Moses said, honor thy father and thy mother, and whoso curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, if a man shall say to his father or mother, it is Corban, that is to say, a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, he shall be free, and ye suffer him more to do aught for his mother or his father, making the word of God of none effect through your tradition. Now, the word Corban is our word of interest for the next minute or two. And the word Corban simply means a gift offered to God. Now, wait a second. What can we learn from this? These numbers are arbitrary. I'm going to use nice round numbers because they're easy to keep track of. Let's say that my mother and father are destitute and cannot take care of themselves, and so I have to provide for them. But there's one problem. I don't have a whole lot of money. I mean, I've got $1 million for my retirement. But if I spend all my money on their retirement, I won't have any for mine. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my $1 million and I'm going to take it down to the priest, and I'm going to say, I want to give this $1 million to God. It's Corban. And then when my parents need my help, I'll say, I don't know what you want from me. I gave all of my money to God. You can't get mad at me for giving money to God, can you? Well, no, I don't guess so. But we're awful hungry. We're going to die due to exposure and destitution. Well, I mean, you take it up with the high priest. Go to the temple and see if you can get some charity, because I have nothing. I give it all to God. And your parents die of neglect. Then you go back to that priest and you say, hey, I'd like my money back. And the priest gives you your $1 million back, less a service fee, which he pockets. That's Corban. Now, Tony, what does it mean to honor thy father and mother? Well, we can know what it means to honor thy father and mother from the perspective of Jesus here by understanding what it means to not honor thy father and mother. We can know what it means to honor thy father and mother by understanding what it means to or understanding the method by which to circumvent that law of God. It's taking care of your parents in their old age. Now, we can extrapolate out, and we understand that honoring your father and mother absolutely entails living in such a way that doesn't bring them reproach. But what if you got a smuck set of parents? What if you got a set of parents that are absolutely terrible? They're secular, they're worldly. You were converted out of that and translated into the kingdom of God's dear Son, and you living a life in Christ actually dishonors them because they absolutely hate it. You still need to take care of them in their old age. But you say, whosoever tells his father and mother, whatever benefit you might have received from me, it is a gift committed to the temple. Yeah, that's Matthew 15:5. Yeah, I added the parallel translations. Yeah, it's a gift devoted to God. Incidentally, Christians do this today with their collection. We'll see a brother and sister in need, and we'll be like, every means whereby I might profit you, I've already given to God. I can't help you. Maybe go there. Maybe go to the church and ask the preacher. Maybe they can help you. I really think, and I'm going to use a pejorative because I don't know what else to use, but these folks, quote unquote, of the anti-persuasion that don't believe in helping non-Christians out of the church treasury, and they're fairly against, in some cases, even helping anybody out of the church treasury because they have a very strict interpretation or narrow interpretation of what the church treasury money is used for. I have found that they are way more benevolent on an individual basis. That probably the average quote unquote anti-individual probably gives more to God than the people that are not quote unquote anti, because they don't fall prey to this idea of Corbin. You know, somebody needs help, they be like, oh, well, I mean, God calls me to help when I can, and I can help you. They don't say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I've already given my offering to God. Think about that. But anyway, so that's what honoring father and mother is. My mother has no authority in my home. My father has no authority in my home. I don't honor him by obeying him. Honor and obedience is two separate things. Marriage creates an individual entity, a totally separate family. It is not two families coming together at its base level. Again, I'm not saying that Jonathan's family on his side and Jonathan's wife's family on her side can't come together and be cordial and even develop strong relationships. But it's not two families being knit together. It's bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. One man, one woman in relation with God. God joins them together. God don't add people to the marriage. All right? We got to remember that. And honoring our father and mother is not obeying our father and mother. Very, very honed in specifically, hyper specific. It's taking care of them in their old age. And it does entail living in such a way that doesn't bring reproach to them. You want to make them proud. We might need to learn to do with less stuff. You had me at less. Anyway, we might need to learn to do with less stuff, less eating out, less whatever it takes. Our parents did that when they had children. We have it pretty backward these days. And John Exum says it may be a good episode to discuss benevolence and giving. I talk about that quite often, benevolence and giving. Ecclesiastes 7:10. Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such a question. Yeah. The reason it's not wise to ask such a question, because there's no utility in it. We don't look back on the past and talk about how much better it was then, because that robs us of the ability to make the present what it should be. If you bring your parents into your home, there will be two kingdoms under one roof. There will be give and take on both sides. Our culture isn't like other cultures who live with their parents. First world problems, I guess. Yes. And that's another thing. I would be interested to talk with other cultures. I don't want to call anybody's name because a lot of different people listen to this podcast, and I'm thankful for the exposure that I've had to cultures not my own. But I feel like in other cultures, whenever the parents live with the children the old age, the parents submit, although the parents always command a certain amount of respect, the husband of the husband is the man of the house, not the father of the husband. And he has the final say. And that's the way it should be. There are two kingdoms under one roof whenever the parents come to live with the children. But one kingdom should submit to the other. Folks, I got to get off here. Connie, I got to go into town myself. Thank you so much, folks. We really appreciate you. Look, I didn't put the tip jar out the whole show. If you get any value out of this whatsoever, consider supporting us monetarily. If you cannot support us monetarily or don't desire to do so, and you want to help, I cannot express in words how powerful sharing our content to your social media platform is. Go to Substack, do a free subscription, and every time we release an article, open it, read it, scan it, whatever, share it to your social media platform. You'll be amazed how much we'll grow. I recently spoke to a man from Uzbekistan. He asked, Americans are so rich, why are they sad? Same reason Elvis Presley in an interview told the interviewer that he had to be the saddest man on the planet, because if you'll allow me to appropriate the words of Blaise Pascal, every man has within his chest a God-sized hole. It can only be filled with God. That's not a direct quote. That's a Tony Brewer paraphrase. Folks, remember, like, subscribe, share our content on your social media platform. Support us monetarily. All the ways to do that is in the comment section, in the show notes, everywhere you look at it. And don't forget Be a Mindful Soul on Substack. And don't forget Christianity Now on Substack, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, TuneIn Radio for the podcast itself. You can find that on the archive. God bless you. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. That's right, Elvis. Elvis led a rough life. All right, I got to get off here. God bless you, and we'll catch you on